I never film my videos from this angle or with this kind of setup. So for me, this is kind of like weird. Hi, book lovers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and as you can tell from the title of the video, today I am doing the mid-year book tag. Since it's the end of June, I thought I would come on here and do my own mid-year book tag since I've read 50 books this year. I wanted to have a bit more of a bookish setup, and also like I just got these pink sheets from HomeSense, and maybe a girl wants to flaunt it a bit. But anyways, we are going to do the mid-year book tag. You're going to hear my opinions on some of my favorite releases, least favorite releases, all of that stuff. So without further ado, let's get started with this video. So the first prompt in this tag is the best book you've read in 2025. And for me, I would say I have three, and a lot of the books that I'm going to talk about in each category will appear in other categories and prompts. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about these books. I'm going to elaborate more in the prompts that fit them a bit more. One of my favorite reads of this year is Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake, and this is the second Olivia Blake book that I've read. Compared to the other one I read, which was One for My Enemy, this one I loved even more. There was something about it that I just really connected with, and there was just a lot of things about it that I personally really liked while reading this book, and it really impacted me. And so I don't want to fully get into it right now because there are other prompts in this tag that just fit it a bit better as like as for my opinions. But yeah, one of the best books I've read so far in 2025 is Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. The next one that I personally enjoyed in 2025, this was not released in 2025 at all, but it is Dinner for Vampires: Life of Being on a Cult TV Show by Bethany Joy Lenz. And this one I enjoyed mostly just due to the fact that at the beginning of this year I was deep into One Tree Hill. And so I like watched One Tree Hill for the first time in my life, and I just got like really deep into the lore, the Drama Queens podcast, all that stuff. And so I wanted to, sort of learn more about sort of the actors and all that on this show that I personally really love and enjoy. And so just getting to hear her perspective of just, so what was going on in her personal life and all of that was just really interesting and all that. I'm someone who doesn't really read a lot of celebrity memoirs, and so it was just an interesting read. And again, like the audiobook was really great. There were cameos from some of the people from One Tree Hill and all of that, and so it was a really entertaining read for me. And then the last book I have in this category is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. And I know this book, I feel like, has so many mixed reviews from people, but I feel like most Emily Henry books do as well. Like, everyone has their rankings and knows which Emily Henry books they like and don't like. And so for me, I personally really enjoyed A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This book really was more on the literary fiction side than the romance side of Emily Henry. And so I really like Great Big Beautiful Life because it sort of branched out a bit in that like the romance between like the female main character and the male main character, it it was prominent in this book, but it wasn't the only type of romance that was in this book. There was a lot of like familial love and learning the different types of love, which is very interesting. And so it delved into, I would say, more of other people's like relationships and uncovering different stories of like other characters in this book besides the main characters. And so I feel like Emily Henry really did try to sort of break out of that, more formulaic writing style that she has. And personally for me, I feel like I would say if you're reading this book primarily thinking that it's just a romance book, then I would see why a lot of people were disappointed, because the romance that happens in this book happens a lot quicker compared to the other books she's released. There were two main storylines that, didn't connect as much as I feel like a lot of people were hoping for. I feel like there were a lot of storylines that kind of pulled you in between each one. And personally, I was invested in both of those storylines. Like, this was still a 5-star read, but if this honestly didn't have any romance in it, I think I would have been fine. Like, if it was just about the relationships of the people in this book, I think, I still would have I would have enjoyed it as much, and I feel like it would have been a stronger book. But at the same time, I feel like since Emily Henry has now been pushed into more of the romance category, I feel like a lot of people are expecting her books to be romances and to, be in that category that, people have confined her to be. And so I'm glad that she took that risk and stepped out of her comfort zone a bit when it came to writing. And personally, for me, I was invested in both storylines. I am in that category where if there's a storyline about a celebrity and they're being unhinged, I'm there. So those are my thoughts on Great Big Beautiful Life. Still one of my favorite reads of 2025. The next prompt we have is the best sequel you've read this year. I haven't read like a sequel to a book because most of the books that I've read are either like standalone books, debut novels, the first book in a series, or books that come later in specific series. So I'm kind of encapsulating this as books that are in a series that you've read this year. The first one in this category, I would say, is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. This is the last book in the Greenbone saga. And when I tell you that I was unwell after reading this book, it tied up the saga so well. And by the end of it, you felt connected to like literally almost every character that appeared in this book. And I literally I wanted more. This one takes place over a longer time period, and so you get to see a lot of the characters that were in the previous book. You get to see what happens to them and what goes on within this longer period of time. And so you see them starting families, or either families growing up, their children becoming adults, and it's a really interesting book to read. And I feel like it's so hard to do that, especially in a fantasy book where so many things are happening at once. But honestly, I thought it was super well done. And by the end of it, and I'll tell you this, a lot of the characters that are in this book are really unlikable. And yet, by the end of it, you are sobbing for them. Even if you don't like them, you still understand, their perspective. And so that's what I really loved about Jade Legacy. And the writing is great, the action is great. And yeah, personally really enjoyed this book. The next book I have for this category is, I wouldn't classify this as a sequel or anything, but it low-key kind of is. And that is Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. This book technically isn't marketed or anything as a sequel, but I would say it technically is a sequel of Not in Love. So Not in Love, I believe Ali Hazelwood released last year. It was more of an erotica type of novel and all that, so it was very spicy. There were a lot of those types of scenes. And then this one is about two characters that appeared in that book going to the main characters of Not in Love's wedding and all of that, if that made sense. But yeah, it's more of a continuation of Not in Love, but I it's to me, I'm like, same universe, pretty much continuation of that storyline. So I guess it is technically a sequel, but this is an age gap romance. It is between Maya, who is the sister of the main male character in Not in Love, and then Connor, who is the main male character, is Not in Love's best friend. This takes place in Italy, and pretty much they are gearing up for Rue and Eli's wedding and all of that. And so it was honestly such a fun read. It was such a great summer read. I gave this 5 stars, I think. yeah, I think I gave this 5 stars just because I had so much fun reading this. And the thing with Allie Hazelwood is like her books are so easy to pick up and so easy to read and get into, but this one I think I read the fastest out of any book that she's written. And I just had so much fun reading, and I felt like I was literally in Italy. It was just a great summer read. I personally like the characters. I thought the banter was funny. I thought, there was a lot of humor to it. And also, there were a ton of characters in here that I feel like a lot of the times when Allie Hazelwood writes her books, she really only sticks to like the main leads of the books. Meanwhile, for this one, I feel like a lot of there were a lot more characters, and each character kind of had a role in all that, which she could do since she already wrote like Not in Love. The next book in this category is All Shall Mourn by Ellie Marney. And so this is the third book in the None Shall Sleep series. I don't know if she actually has a name for this series. The first book is None Shall Sleep, and the second book is Some Shall Break. And pretty much it's about these two teenagers that get recruited by the FBI to help them solve a case back in like the 80s, I believe. And so it is very similar. It's very similar to The Naturals, but also very different. When I tell you, this book had my jaw drop in every single page I turned. Like, the thing with this book series is that I truly could not predict what was going to happen next. And so every single time I like turned the page, I was just like, oh my gosh, like what is happening right now? But like in a good way, if that makes sense. I really like the previous two books, but I think this one was the strongest when it just came to everything, when it came to a lot of the horror, the thriller of it all, the mystery, the suspense. Like there was just a lot of it, and truly like you felt bad for like the main characters like throughout this whole book. And the I guess the villain or like the antagonist of this book as well is a very interesting character. One of my favorite reads, or one of the best sequels I've read this year. The next prompt we have is new release you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, so a lot of the new releases I want to read are on my TBR cart, and the thing about my TBR cart is that um these books are very tall for it, and it's hard to get them out. So I'm not going to try and like yank them out for this video. But the first one I have is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. And the only V.E. Schwab book that I've read is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And people say that if you like that book, you would like her new release. And I personally really liked The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, so I'm very excited to read it. And I heard that there's also vampires involved, which, yes, please, I want to read a book about vampires. The next one I have is My Friends by Frederick Bachman, which is also here. I really like blue books for some reason. And so that one, I just really want to get into Frederick Bachman since people keep talking about him and I'm getting FOMO. So I think that is also going to be one of the next things I read. And then another book I want to read that's been released is Never Thought I'd End Up Here by Anne Leung. And if you've watched videos on my channel, you know that I am a Anne Leung stan. She is one of my auto-buy authors. I just love everything. Actually, no. I love most of the books that she's released, and so I just know it's going to be a very fun coming of age novel. I love sharing books that represent, my culture. Yeah, those are the new releases that I haven't read yet, but I really want to read. The next prompt is most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. So the first book I have on my TBR, and I will be at the bookstore when it gets released, is Cold Wire by Chloe Gong. If you don't know this about me, Chloe Gong is the author that pretty much got me back into reading and all that. I loved the Secret Shanghai series or whatever, like These Violent Delights, Our Violent Ends. Like, I ate those up when I first got back into my reading era. And then she released her adult fantasy series, Immortal Longings, and that's still ongoing. Anything she writes, I will be reading. The next book I have for this category is Catabasis. Everyone's saying it differently. It's either Catabasis or Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about this book based off of people who've been like receiving the arcs of it and all that. Personally, like I love R.F. Kuang's writing and all of that. I've I've enjoyed everything that she's written so far. I'm just really going into it with sort of like not a lot of info and very low expectations, I would say. Like, I am someone who most of the time goes into books literally not knowing what they're about and not having expectations for them at all. So that's how I choose to go. And then the last one I have is The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold by Ally Carter. And Ally Carter was literally the author that got me into reading, period, as a like literally as like a 13-year-old. And so literally anything that she writes, I support. And so I'm excited for her to release this book because it is the sequel, I think, or it's like it's connected to the Blonde Identity book, which is like her adult, I guess, rom com type esque book, but it's pretty much like the Gallagher Girl series, but for adults. Sign me up immediately. So, yeah, those are the most anticipated releases that I have. The next prompt is biggest surprise. Okay, so the first book I have for biggest surprise is Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. This is why I was holding out on saying anything at the beginning. And so going into this one, I really didn't know what to expect. And I literally just saw this on Libby and I was like, okay, I'll take it out. And so I took it out and I just saw that it just very much gave like Succession vibes. Not that I've seen the show Succession at all, but I was like, okay, I love reading about rich people and their problems. And when there's family dynamics involved, I have to sit and I have to be there and watch and just listen. And this book literally gave me everything that I could have asked for. I thought the writing was just really like unique. Olivia Blake, writes in a very unique way in that a lot of her like in that the narrator for this book is so funny and the characters in this book are so unlikable but in a funny way. Like I feel like if you go into this book knowing that the characters are supposed to be unlikable and are so far out of touch with reality, then it just becomes like a more enjoyable read. This one is more character based than plot. There's not a lot of plot to it, and there's also like a fantasy element to it and a magical element to it, but it's not really elaborated or kind of really explained in like deep in depth. Really, it's just about these like characters that are these rich like siblings who are very out of touch with the world and reality and the relationships that they have and how they navigate a specific problem that has come into their lives. And overall, I had such a fun time reading this. I picked it up and I could not put it down, and like I literally had to run to the bookstore and grab it off the shelf because I just needed to read it like physically. And so yeah, that is one of the biggest surprises because I simply like was not even planning on reading it or picking it up at all. The next one I have is The Favorites by Lane Fargo, and usually when it comes to like book talk books and all of that, it's hit or miss for me. It's either I really like it or I really don't. And I personally really like The Favorites. I can't really explain why I like The Favorites because I feel like there were just so many elements to it that like I personally enjoyed. I think like the figure skating aspect was really interesting because not that I figure skated, but I did grow up in Canada, and so like figure skating was a very big there's a bug on my window and I'm gonna go kill it. Never mind. The bug is outside. It's just huge and crawling on my window right now. It's like just growing up in Canada and like watching the Winter Olympics and all that, like figure skating has always been a part of that Canadian culture. And then like bringing in the toxicity of the characters like that are almost very like Magnolia Parks-esque, but like and also like it also kind of gave like Daisy Jones and the Six vibes as well. So there were just a lot of elements to it that I think worked in all of that. I personally thought there would be more drama to it. I was actually like kind of begging for more drama because I feel like the drama that happened in that book, like it was dramatic enough that like, characters were doing things and all that, but at the same time I'm just like could have been more. And another book that surprised me a lot was The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. And that's just mostly because I've read all the books that she's released so far. And with like Never, I didn't really enjoy it. And then Magnolia Parks, it's a whole series. So it's like you kind of have to read them all before you judge. And I personally love the Magnolia Park series. And so when she released the standalone, I was kind of like, okay, like what's this about, what am I getting into? And I knew like nothing about the book, and as I read it, I just enjoyed it. I love Jessa Hastings writing. Like I think, she has a lot of quotes and all of that like really, explain a lot of the thoughts I personally have in my brain and all that. For this one, I think the plot itself was very predictable, but it was done in a very satisfying way that I was okay with it. Um, but yeah, this one just surprised me a lot because I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much. And also, since this is a standalone, I was very like skeptical reading this because actually, you know what? I'll get to it in a different prompt or whatever. But I was sort of skeptical of it at first, but after completing it, it passed my expectations. Biggest disappointments this year, personally for me, it was reading both Reckless and Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This prompt I added myself because I don't think a lot of the other book takes have this one. This is my YouTube channel and I'm choosing to be a bit of a hater. Sorry if you disagree with me on these books, but these are just my thoughts. The first disappointments I had were Reckless and Fearless by Lauren Roberts. And okay, I'm someone who didn't like love Powerless. Like when I read Powerless, I was like, okay, like this is a fun book. It's very YA. It's similar to a lot of the books that I've read before. So like to me, I was in that group of people that was like, it was like fun, but it's like not original. I still read it. I had a good time with it. Powerless, I think I gave about a 4 stars to, and I understood why people enjoyed it and I understood the hype. Reading Reckless, I was sort of like, what are we doing here? Like, where are we going with this? What is happening in this book? Literally, nothing happens in the book that is worth like telling or anything or like reiterating just because not much happens. It's pretty much like Dance of Thieves, but there's no point to it, if that makes sense. Or it's pretty much Dance of Thieves, and Lauren Roberts is trying to get you, like, she's trying to set up the next book, which is understandable, but it was just poorly executed and it was just a boring read in general. By the time I got to Fearless, I was done with the series. I was done with the characters. I didn't connect to any of the characters. I didn't connect to what was happening in the plot. And like, there were a lot of tropes that she used in that specific book that I hate. I do not like reading it, and them being introduced just made me not like it anymore. If you love Reckless or Fearless or whatever by Lauren Roberts, go ahead. But to me, it was honestly, it felt like a waste of my time. Like, and I didn't even like physically read these books. I listened to them on audiobook because at least like the male audiobook narrator for Kai, like he was giving, like his narration was given. He was the reason why I could continue on with the next book and all that after Reckless, because I was really debating on whether or not to pick that one up. And so he was literally the reason why I listened to to Fearless. Another disappointment I had was You with a View by Jessica Joyce. My friend convinced me to read this, and I just I think after reading that, I just learned that I don't love a road trip trope. That is not my favorite trope, even though like for forced proximity is sort of my like one of the tropes I really like. I just don't like a road trip one. I thought it would be a bit more unhinged pretty much the entire time. Like this whole like in this whole book, the female main character is just trying not to tell the male main character that she's unemployed. There was nothing about it that I could connect with, and the characters just really annoyed me a lot. And by the time I got to like the last third, they annoyed me even more. And so, yeah, I just didn't love that book. And another disappointment I had was unfortunately Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I just don't think it's as strong of a book as like the other series and all of that. And the thing is, like, I enjoyed maybe like the first 40% of this book. And then I was enjoying it until I didn't. I was enjoying this book until I didn't. And that's really unfortunate. I feel like the first 40% was so strong because she built like this relationship between the two characters so well. And then by the time we understand why they can't be together and all of that, there was just nothing to reinforce that idea of like they are meant to be together or anything like that. It's just like, it just felt like one of the characters tried more than the other in this relationship. And it didn't hit. This book just didn't hit for me compared to her other ones. Next prompt, favorite author, debut, or new to you. So, I guess like even though I've read one of her books before, I would say like she should go in this category, and that is Olivia Blake. Like after reading Gifted and Talented, that made me want to pick up one of her other books. And then another author I would say goes into this category is Leanne Zhang, which she wrote Julie Chan is Dead. And personally, I just like found that book really fun to read, and it was a book that I picked up and I just really wanted a quick mystery thriller satire to read, and that did the trick. And yeah, I really liked her writing. I really like sort of how that book was set up. Newest fictional crush. So I don't have many, I would say, in the books that I've read, which is kind of a shock to me. But the first fictional crush I have is Sam Penny from The Conditions of Will. When I say that The Conditions of Will surprised me, it was mostly I was mostly surprised by the male main character having the greenest of green flags. Like, I've just never read a Jessa Hastings book that has a male main character that has green flags. And so when I was reading that book, like when I read the first few chapters and I met this guy, I was so skeptical. I was like, oh, the red flags are going to show soon. Like he's going to be like the worst guy ever. And then it just never came up. And I was so surprised by that. And so like he was a character I was very skeptical of. But then I guess for Jessa Hastings, in a lot of her standalones, she gives the guys green flags. So after learning that, I was like, okay, he's he's going to be on my fictional crush list. And then I would say the next character that's on my fictional crush list is Xavier Rush from Say You'll Remember Me. Just because I didn't like the book didn't mean I hated the male main character. Like, I think he honestly was the best part of the book, and I will stand by that opinion. But yeah, those are my newest fictional crushes. Books that made you cry. First one is Atmosphere. The amount of tabs I have on this, like in this book, there's so many quotes that I just related to a lot. And this is a love story, but it explains the different types of love and finding your found family and finding people who understand you and love you and care about you. There are so many quotes that, I feel like reading it now, I like have stuck with me, but I know that like if I read this 10 years later, there's going to be quotes that hit me even harder. And so that's what I really loved about Atmosphere. I just think that it was also such a beautiful book. Other books that made me cry, Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. I usually cry reading her books, and also Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I also normally cry reading her books. Most beautiful books I've bought this year, the cover of The Conditions of Will is stunning because she hires an actual artist to like paint her book covers. And then obviously Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I just love the colors, and just the book cover itself just encapsulates the story of Atmosphere. So looking at it, and then once you read those quotes, you'll understand why this book cover is just so beautiful and stunning. The next prompt is what books you need to read by the end of this year. The first books I need to read is the Infernal Devices trilogy, because I did a whole Mortal Instruments reading vlog, and I did that just so I could get to the Infernal Devices because people say that that is like one of the best series that Cassandra Clare has written. And so I need to be a part of that crowd. The next one I have is The Will of the Many by James Islington, and I have it right here because they just released it in paperback, and so I'm excited to read that. I've heard great reviews on that one, and also A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. It's been on my TBR for such a long time, and I just want to rip off the bandage. And so I don't know when I'll get to it, but I do need to get to it by the end of this year. The next prompt is how many 5-star reads this year. And so I rated 6 books 5 stars. So 5 of them fiction, 1 memoir. And so that is Jade Legacy, Dinner for Vampires, Problematic Summer Romance, Great Big Beautiful Life, Atmosphere, and Gifted and Talented. And you know my reasons. Hence this video. What books do you want to reread this year? And for me, I love rereading series, and so the first series I want to reread is Throne of Glass. The second one I want to reread is To All the Boys. The third I want to reread is Magnolia Parks, which I technically am rereading that series because I was annotating it. It's just been super slow. But yeah, those are the books I want to reread this year. Books you enjoyed with mixed reviews. So the first one, obviously, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. And the second one is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I enjoyed the romance in that book. And again, like any other Ali Hazelwood book you read, it goes by super quickly and it's pretty well done. I just personally I like the romance. I just hated the secondary characters in that book. Like, they did nothing for me. The last prompt we have is 5-star predictions for the rest of the year. Personally, I have no idea, but I feel like it might be a Frederick Bachman book. I don't know if it's going to be My Friends because it is the first book I'm reading by him, so I don't know really the vibes for that one just yet. Maybe Cold Wire by Chloe Gong, and maybe Time of Your Life by Jessa Hastings, but yeah, I really don't know. I feel like a lot of the 5-star reads that I have are just books that impact me on a whole different level. And it like a lot of the books that I rate 5-star, they don't have to have the perfect writing and they don't have to have the most likable characters or the most likable plot. Like, if I'm entertained or if the vibes are good or if there's just something about that book that impacts me on a different level that other books haven't, that's why I usually give it a 5 stars. So that is it for the mid-year book tag, and so I might do a video of like all of the books I've read the first half of the year just because it's easier than doing like a yearly wrap up on this channel, but it also depends on how I feel. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I don't know who started this mid-year book tag thing. Let me know if you have the same opinions as me, different opinions as me, whatever. Just be respectful in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.